Hi, my name is Scott W. Mavers. I'm a student at the University of North Texas. This is for the class Corporate Presentation Skills, ATTD 5121. The name of this presentation today will be The Art of SQL, and it's to help us demystify the area of structured query language, also known as SQL. Some people call it SQL. Now, about myself, I've been a student now for a little under a year, attempting to obtain my master's degree in interdisciplinary studies. And I worked 20 years in telecommunications, a little bit more, worked in project management, engineering, training, technical writing. And I just want to thank all of you for attending here today. And now just take a little time to tell me about yourself. Just write down what you know about SQL on the sheet I provided to you. Tell me a little bit about yourself, and I'll review these a little bit later. So why don't we go ahead and just jump on in right about SQL right now. The objectives today we're going to cover are: first, understand the acronym SQL. It's Structured Query Language. It's a popular way to retrieve data from relational databases. And we do this by using different ways, but one is DDL for data definition language. Another is DML for data manipulation language. And then we also use a statement called the select statement. Also, an objective today is for you to understand the basic structure of a table you would find in a relational database. The database is just comprised of tables, sometimes hundreds, thousands upon thousands of tables, and each table can relate to another table if structured to do so. And then also, once we create a table today and insert some values into the table, we're going to view some reports, some various reports you can look at through a tool called SQL Fiddle, and you can find this tool at sqlfiddle.com. As we mentioned, there are tables within the relational database, and we are going to build some of those tables today, or at least one table, and insert values so you can see how to create the table from concept until planting it within the database. So some of the database basics first. Data is stored in the tables. It's called a relational database. And as you look at the screen here, you'll see the database with the canister symbol. And there are tables. Sometimes Depending on the size of the corporation or the government entity, sometimes 1,000 tables, 5,000 tables, 10,000 tables, or more. Are there any questions? Okay, the database basics. As we discussed, the tables within the relational database have rows and columns, sometimes 1,000,000 rows or more, sometimes thousands of columns, but each row is called a record under the column. And today what we're going to do is just create a very simple table with a few columns and 5 rows. Hi. Now what we're going to do is look at the table up on the screen right now. We have a column called Employee ID. The second column is called Last Name. And the last column is called Department _ ID. What we've done is create a mock table here as if it's from a corporation. And each employee has an employee ID. Here, employee ID 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Last names Archer, Bell, Carver, Dillon, and Eastwood. And each one is assigned to a department ID, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500. What we're going to do is take a good look at this, and we're going to go in and use structured query language to create the table. Okay, so now what we're going to do is create a database with SQL, as promised. By the way, this is a really nice way for engineers and programmers and developers to go ahead and test ideas before they actually enter the data into an Oracle database or a Dell database. There are many other manufacturers and vendors out there, but Oracle is a leader, so is Microsoft, so is Amazon, etc. But what we're going to do is use this tool called SQL Fiddle. You can find it at sqlfiddle.com. Let's go ahead and proceed and let's have some fun. So now what we do is we enter this command as shown in your handout. Okay? We're going to create a table called employees, just like we saw earlier with Bell, Archer, Eastwood, Department 100, Department 200, Employee ID 2, Employee ID 3, etc. We're going to enter this command as shown, which is create table employees. The first column is going to be called employee _ ID, and you must surround that with quotation marks, which we call ticks. So employee _ ID, tick, beginning, end tick. Apostrophe. Oh, by the way, the INT is for integer. Sometimes versions of SQL require NUM for number. We're going to use INT for integer. Then we're going to enter the last name, a variable character. We're going to allow up to 12 variable characters. And then the last column is going to be called Department _ ID, where we're going to also allow up to 12 variable characters. Once this is typed out, go ahead and enter semicolon. That means you're finished with the statement. Also, once you run what they call the schema, a schema is just another fancy name for a table. Once you run the command, make sure on the bottom part of the screen it's green, which means there are no errors. If you see an error, it will be red or a pinkish color. That means you did not enter the statement correctly. So now we're going to proceed to the next part, which is the real meat and potatoes of this course, which is we're going to insert values into the employees table. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with employee ID number 1, who is Archer, who works in department 100, and so on down the line. Employee ID number 2 for last name Bell in department 200, on down to employee ID number 5 for last name Eastwood, working in department 500. Once you've entered this data as shown in your handout, go ahead and hit the semicolon and run the button called Build Schema. Look for the green. Red means you have an error. Keep doing it until you have no errors. Once you see the green, then you have actually created a table using structured query language, and you're done. And now the fun part is we can retrieve the data. The SQL query, also called the select statement, is really simple to use, and all we do, like I mentioned earlier, is enter it in the right hand side of the screen at the top. And the basic format is select the attributes of the table from one or more of the tables or the relational tables, and then you can use the where condition as optional, where such and such conditions are met. We're just going to use simple select statements today. So right now we are going to type in select asterisk from employees, from the employees table, and then type in semicolon to indicate we are finished with the statement. So select star from employees. Sometimes I call the asterisk a star, like a slang. So select star from employees, then hit the Run SQL button. Now what we're going to do, when you look at the screen behind me, SQL Fiddle, we're going to run various queries and retrieve data from the database we just created called employees, and we're going to look at various reports we can yield. For example, we can enter one called select department ID from employees. We can also enter another one called select employee ID from employees, or we can just look at the last name of the employees. For example, select last underscore name from employees, semicolon. And then just look at the various reports which the return results from the database. You may ask why. Well, I work in one department, somebody else works in another department. Maybe they need to know the employee ID, the department ID, and the last name. But in our case, maybe all we need to know is the employee ID and the last name, and we're not interested in the department ID. We only want to know the employee ID and the employee last name. And this is just to keep, when you learn later, is that we can take this information and marry it up to another table in the database and glue those two parts of information together. And this is why it's called relational, because one table can relate to another table and yet can relate to another table. And you can build various reports for management, for corporate reports, quarterly reports, annual reports, so on and so forth. Now, if you have any other questions going forward, please feel free to reach out to me anytime and contact me through the contact information I provided at the beginning of the class. You can call me or send an email. And this is for the University of North Texas. It's a demonstration of SQL Fiddle and structured query language. I appreciate all of you coming in to attend today. I enjoyed every one of you and what you had to tell me about SQL and what you hope to learn about SQL. And I just thank you so much, and I hope everybody has a great summer and a nice autumn. Thank you so much.